Hey guys, welcome to CPL Fever. It's your host JackMurray here, and today on another episode of Soccer Stories, Get Into the Journey. It is my great pleasure to have former Canadian national team head coach and former Trinidad and Tobago national team head coach and current Halifax Wanderers head coach, CPL Coach of the Year, the illustrious Stephen Hart. So how are you, Stephen?
Not too bad, thank you. After that, I feel very good, very privileged.
Long list of accomplishments. So how we usually start things off is, I like to know how you fell in love with soccer.
It's funny because it was, in my time in Trinidad and Tobago, basically there were two sports. There was a cricket season and a football season, and you just played whatever the other kids were playing at the time. It was mainly, everything was mainly in some piece of land somewhere, because I am from the south of the country, where it was more countryside, so to speak. So it was either in the street or on somebody's property somewhere that we just got together and played, and I guess I fell in love with the sport because my dad, in those days there was something called Soccer Saturday, which would it would come I think a week later than the actual game played on TV, and it was basically mainly Manchester United and whoever they were playing, and my dad used to religiously watch it. So, and he was a sporting type of person, so I guess it was inevitable. I just fall in love with soccer, but he always said I was a better cricketer.
Oh, really? Maybe you missed your calling. Think of what you could have done coaching cricket.
Too many long days standing up in the sun.
Yeah, we're super happy to have you as a soccer coach.
Thank you.
So what was it like growing up in Trinidad and Tobago? Like, was soccer a big part of the culture there?
Yeah, football. Yeah, it was a huge part of the culture in terms of playing and watching. And when I say watching, not on television, because that was not a luxury people had, but going and watch, the older guys play in various leagues in various villages. And it was huge because what really got you attracted to it was how they entertained the crowd, the excitement of the crowd. And in my time, the crowds at football were big. Even if it was countryside football, the fields would be surrounded with people.
So a lot different than soccer at the island games.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you said to yourself, I want to be one of these people that have this crowd jumping up and calling your name and singing and carrying on, and you just fall in love with that whole atmosphere.
Yeah, I bet. So did you watch a lot of soccer growing up as well?
Well, as much as I can, but I watched a lot of live soccer and our own local sort of heroes. I watched a lot of that. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I lived about, I would say, maybe 8 kilometers from the city, and I used to go there and watch games. There would be games at 4 o'clock. 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and I'd just be there watching games, So I kind of grew up with people all around you talking about the game, explaining what's going on, criticizing, You just sort of grew up in that environment.
So that's pretty unique because you got the chance to watch a lot of live soccer, which is obviously different than watching it on TV. Do you think, looking back, that might have helped you understand soccer holistically as you became a coach?
That's a good question. I think what happened at that time was that you could only see something once. and you'd have to remember it and then go back and practice it, and there'd be a lot of lively discussions after the games on the way home and all of that among people. So you had to focus more. You couldn't rewind. You couldn't catch it later. Everything was live and direct. I think that added a lot to the romance of it as well. I mean, you see people do something now on TV and it's like, oh yeah, you kind of shrug at it. Whereas when you actually see it live and you can only see it once, that sort of stays in your memory. I had this discussion with some of the players the other day about Benzema's goal when he controlled it on his head and side volleyed it into the net, and the level of difficulty and all of that. But I mean, when you read the media, it was like, oh yeah, okay, ho hum, But when you see something like that live, you never forget it,
Yeah, that's something really nice about watching a game live. That's something that I really liked about being a ball boy, or even watching in the stands, just watching the Wanderers play. Beautiful moment of magic was such a nice feeling to see.
Yeah, of course.
And I want to ask you, what made you want to be a coach?
In all honesty, I don't think I actually wanted to be a coach. I wanted to help some young players, and I just went out and was, I really had no clue what I was doing. I was just showing them how to dribble and control the ball, and we were in a gym, and I took the chairs and made them run with the ball and, try to stick it between the legs of the chairs and pick it up on the other side, and just things that, we sort of did in my time. Because you have to remember, in my time, we had one or two balls for everybody. So coaching was a lot different. It was more surrounded around gameplay. So when you did have time with a ball, whatever little plastic ball you can buy or afford, you would be doing all these little things with the ball. And that's all I was doing with kids, is just trying to have them have as much fun as possible. And then, coaching just grew out of that.
Okay, that's cool. So you began teaching kids, and then you fell in love with that feeling?
Well, there was a couple of gentlemen here. One, his name was Professor Roman Narabecki. He was an absolute fanatic about the game. Dr. Ordain was another one, and George Atanasiu was another one. They were all, sort of coaxing me, pushing me towards going and take license and doing more with the coaching, because up to that point, I was more what I would consider a player developer. I would work with individual players and with players about improving the current abilities they had and trying to add something to their game. So, they were encouraging me to move more into the coaching from a team perspective by taking courses, etc., etc.
Yeah, okay, so that's interesting. They encouraged you to take courses, and then you learned about that, a little bit about how to coach a team. But also, because you were a player before you were a coach, I was wondering if you think that gives you any advantage over other coaches that weren't players before they became a coach.
That's a long-standing debate, but more of what as a player is the potential feelings of the players on the field, what they may be going through, understanding that they're going to make mistakes, they're going to be ups and downs, and just sort of helping them with certain things to look for. But I mean, it's difficult to say that it actually transfers, because I played a lot wide and in the midfield and as a 10, but I didn't know a lot about playing with my back to goal and being a striker or being a defender and holding your space, and so all those things had to be learned like anybody else. So it's a debate that will continue.
What? Yes, you said you played in the midfield and on the wide midfield. What type of player were you when you were playing? Because you played for the Trinidad and Tobago national team, right?
Well, excuse me, I was selected young for that. I was just sort of, well, I had been in the league actually a few years well, but I was about 18 or 19 when I did get selected. And I was there in all the training and some exhibition games and stuff, but I didn't spend a lot of time. I came to Canada. I didn't spend a lot of time with the national team. But I did spend a fair amount of time in the league. And actually, luckily enough, for some reason, I ended up playing with some of the best players the country had ever produced. So that itself was a major education, about how to train, how to carry yourself, how to respect the dressing room, and all those things. Excuse me. So yeah, I mean, from that standpoint, you would have to have a certain amount of ability to get selected for your country. But yeah, I moved to Canada at 21.
Yeah, tell me about that. What was the reason for your move, and what prompted you to pick Canada?
Actually, there was a guy here that I played against. His name was Jeff Agostini, and I knew him, fairly well in terms of being an opponent. But he told the coach his mom had sent him some newspaper clippings, and he saw where I had just got on the national team, and he told the coach at the university, "I know this guy," and the coach said, "Get him here," and he offered me to come up, and I had a good job at the time, and but then again, that sort of adventure, learning a new culture, being able to play football, because at the time I thought football was a lot bigger in North America than when I actually arrived. But yeah, so he brought me up, and the rest is history, I guess.
And before you left Trinidad, or since you've been in Canada for so long, what's one thing that you really miss about Trinidad?
The people. They they have a different view of life, obviously, in the sense that they don't take anything too serious, and sometimes that's good and sometimes it's bad. But in general, especially in a certain time period, in my time period, life on the islands was fairly comfortable, and really and truly the approach to life and that joy of living is something you have to experience sometimes to appreciate it.
It's like living in the moment, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it, and nothing really phases them, but I think those times have sort of gone away as things became more industrial and development came by. But people still enjoy life, love to dance, love to sing, love music, So yeah, I miss the people.
Yeah, that sounds nice. I was just gonna ask you, what is one Trinidad and Tobago food that everyone should try? I think you were about to ask that too.
Wow. Well, we have such a variety of food because of the ethnic mix of the island. So it's that's hard to say. We've got street food that is called doubles. That is absolutely delicious. Most people eat it for breakfast, but now it could be breakfast, lunch, or dinner, depending on what you're feeling for. A Caribbean Indian dish called a roti, which is curried meat or vegetables wrapped in a sort of a split peas wrap. That's another sort of delicacy. And there's so much. I think if it's one thing Trinidad and Tobago peoples have not done is promote their cuisine. because it's very much like Thai cuisine. You know, a lot of flavors, a lot of variety. And we have that African, Indian, European, Chinese mix in the culture, and or I should say Asian, really. And our food expresses that a lot.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
We'll have to try cooking up some of those dishes over here at our house.
Yeah, easy, man.
Yeah.
Look up CaribbeanPot.com. The guy is good.
Okay.
Okay,
I'll
we
do
will.
that. So when you're looking at, let's get back to coaching for a second. So when you're looking at coaching, what is one thing that when you get a player, you're looking for? Like do you look for attitude? Do you look for skill? Is there kind of a certain level that you're looking for?
Well, let's put it this way. You know, the mere fact that someone's looking at you means you have some sort of talent that they want. Usually that may be positionally, you know. But mentality is what makes the difference. You have to have the right mindset, the right mentality, because talent would only take you so far, you know. Me personally, I have a view on the game that I don't want to say is different from anybody else, but there's players that I consider real footballers, and then there are players that are functional. They're very good. They're good players. They play a role. They can play the game. There's no doubt about it. But there's definitely two categories of players. You build your team according to the positions and the quality you're looking for that position. And then, of course, you're always looking for two or maybe three very special players that can make a difference, which is hard to find at times. And when we do see them on the world stage, or when we do see them even at our level, you can appreciate them even more.
It's great when you're scouting to find that player that you could build your team around, that, like you said, the impact player that will really make something happen for you. And I wanted to ask you, what do you look for in young players?
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm? Okay.
I think you have to love the game, Jack. If you don't love it deep down, if you don't love it, it's difficult, because you are entering, you want to enter an environment that's extremely competitive. By nature, it's a competitive environment. You are competing to get on a team. You are competing to stay on the team. You are competing to win games all the time. It's you don't enter a running race just to run. You're competing, so you have to have that mindset. And if you have that enthusiasm and that love, you overcome anything that might be a setback. You overcome injuries, you overcome weaknesses that you may have, because you are willing to work on those weaknesses. You are willing to polish your strengths. You're willing to learn. So enthusiasm is extremely important. Now, there are enthusiastic players that are difficult to handle. But they don't have a bad attitude. They're just difficult to handle, But they do have players that have some talent, that have a bad attitude. And I think a bad attitude is when you don't conform to the team, because nothing is more important than the team. Mm-hmm. That's when I think you have a bad attitude. But if you have an attitude that is a little bit troublesome, a little bit wayward, but when you come to practice, you respect the dressing room, you respect the team and the game, then you're manageable. You might be a headache, but you are manageable.
And have you had to deal with a lot of headaches in your coaching career?
For sure. Usually some of the best talents are the headaches.
So that must be pretty interesting, because it's kind of this dichotomy between what you said of being competitive and yet still holding the team as the highest importance, right? So
I firmly believe that the the team is made up of individuals, right? And I think most players understand that there's a hierarchy in every team. You know who has certain qualities. You have to respect them for their qualities. Put them in positions where their roles and responsibilities enhance those qualities, and understand that they are no more or less important than anybody else on the team. The rules are the same for everybody on the team. But within the team, you understand that certain players have to get the ball in certain places. You know, not everybody in basketball brings the ball up the court. And it's no
right.
different in soccer. If you're a ball winner, then win the ball. You know, if you're a passer, then the ball winner tries to get the ball to the passer, and the passer tries to get us as close to goal as possible. And if your job is to finish, then finish it. You know, but all make up the team. The team is everything, and that includes the staff. Right? They are part of the team. And some great clubs are not getting it right at the moment because their team off the field is a headache, as we are seeing with a lot of big clubs. So the entire team is more important than any individual. And if I have a troublesome individual that's not conforming, I get rid of them. Simple as that. As much as I may like their ability, the team is more important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree with that because, like you said, the team is made of individuals, but the team really is a unit of the staff, all the players coming together, trying to win games for the team collectively.
Yeah, we owe it to the ownership, we owe it to the fans.
So I have a question. You mentioned you coached a lot of talented players over the years. You've coached the national teams, that sort of thing. Would you say that all professional soccer players, or the good ones, have an obsession with soccer? I heard that Thierry Henry, he wanted, even when the players were talking off the field, he wanted them talking about soccer 90% of the time.
Yeah, I think you have to respect that players have lives outside of football. But I always tell the players the team belongs to you. I come with the framework. I try to put certain things in place to enhance your ability, do your job, and get it done. But that requires you as a team to be discussing the game and the functions and the opposition and everything else. You know, if you're just going out there and just want to play, you better be very, 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 very talented, you know, because everybody else is studying you. And I try to tell the players, think of it as boxing. You're not going to enter a fight without knowing something about the person you're fighting against.
Right.
You know, else you might not be in the fight very long.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
And I also have another question for you about subs. So if let's say if it's like a tight game, 1-1, what do you want in an impact sub?
Well, I think sometimes a lot of that depends on your bench. You know, because one of the things I tried to do in the last 2 years was to have two players that can play in each position, but different in quality.
I can see that.
Because, you know, like for like changes, okay, someone might come on and do something, but like for like changes very seldom solve the problem. What you want to do is to make a change that presents the opposition with some type of problem, or helps you solve a problem that you are probably having at the time. So, you know, that takes a lot of time to get that sort of balance right. But what you generally need is you know, one or two players that that may come on and make something different happen. I had a player called Ian Hume with Canada. He was small, but Ian just loved confrontation, loved to hit, loved to, make defenders' life miserable. And he sort of, but he was very talented. But when he came off the bench, he would disrupt every back line because he would lay himself in, even though he was small, he would lay himself into tackles. He would challenge for every ball. He would make you uncomfortable. And once that starts to happen, other things start to happen around the pitch because, that player, they recognize is in some trouble and they send somebody to cover him and that frees up somebody else on the pitch, etc., etc. So, those sort of changes when it's 1-1 could bring you back into the game.
Yeah, that's interesting. And he's been on One Soccer, talking on One Soccer.
Yeah, he's there now. That's correct.
Yeah,
he is there now. Yeah, I'm glad to see him there because he's a straight talker.
He seems very intense and
he's a
very
straight talker.
opinionated.
He will not be politically correct. So that's good.
Yeah, I like him. I like him on the One Soccer panel.
Yeah. Now I have a question about versatility. If the level of coaching goes up and there's more stats on different teams, so you can kind of have more information to prepare, and the other coaches can have more information to prepare. And you like to have impact subs that make a difference. Is a positionally versatile player more important now than say 10 years ago?
No, probably from the perspective of you not losing your balance, maybe yes, because you can send on the player knowing that they wouldn't let you down in doing a job, and this is more so in the CPL because our squads are so small. We don't have you see the Premier League and the Spanish League, they have 23 players, but they really have 60 players. They got 40-something players. So when the squad is in a bit of injury trouble, they do have players you could call upon. We don't have that luxury. We have, 20 or 23 signed. And if you have a couple of injuries, like we experienced in year one, you have to ask players to do a job. And if you're not comfortable with doing the job, you go into the game with the wrong mindset. So, yeah, I think from a point of keeping you balanced, yes.
Well, that's very interesting.
So when you're watching a game, and obviously you have a good reading of the players' fitness levels because you're coaching them, you're seeing them in practice, you know where they are if they're coming back from like a minor injury or whatnot. But like if you're playing like a video game like FIFA, you can see their stamina bar goes down. When you're watching a game, how do you know who's tiring and who's due for that change?
Well, the players do wear GPS for the games, but we don't have the live GPS numbers coming in as we perform, but we do have an idea of the player's level of fitness. But right now, it's still done very much by eye. You look at their recovery runs. You look at how quickly they support the attack, and sometimes you realize that a player is done, but really have no choice but to leave that player on because you need to make a substitution somewhere else. So you might send a little message in to tell that player, well maybe you stay home and fill a gap and allow another player to push on more than you would, but it's still done very much by experience really of looking at players because we don't have the real time number on the bench. We don't have that sort of network yet behind us.
So it's up to the coach.
Well, yeah, it's up to the staff. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of times, even the medical staff, they'd be like, hey, keep an eye on so and so. His hamstring wasn't 100%. So as soon as we see any sort of level of discomfort or a significant drop in their stamina, because let's face it, you can only make 3 subs.
Right.
So regardless, there's another 7 players out there that might be reaching their max numbers as well. There's nothing you can do about it.
Is that kind of a weird thing? It makes it kind of unique to soccer, doesn't it?
Yeah, when we had that sub rule in the island games, I kept getting it wrong. I got it the first 3 games. I couldn't get accustomed to it at all. So I'd be, let's get so and so on, and they'd be like, Jan and them would be like, well, we can't, because you didn't make this sub at halftime, and they had all these rules, regulations, and I kept getting it wrong for the first 3 games. So it kept reminding me while we were sitting on the bench. You're just not accustomed to it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it must have been weird being a coach for so long and then just having this one season that like you could use 5 subs with all these new rules. It must have been a bit disorienting.
Yeah, and the teams with the deeper bench always have the advantage when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think that it also could have disoriented the players sometimes with almost having half of the team being subbed?
Well, it does disrupt the team because teams fall into a rhythm, a flow. They start working in unison. Their lines start working together. They've solved whatever problems they've had, and they kind of fall in sync. And you send on some players now, and all of that gets a bit disrupted. So substitutions are really a big hit and a miss, even at the top levels. When the coach pulls it off, it's a brilliant substitution. And then other times it completely destroys the rhythm of the team, and it could be a disaster. That's why you see coaches seldom change players in the back line, especially center backs.
Right.
You seldom ever see a center back getting subbed unless it's an injury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
And I was going to ask you something about your whole coaching career. So as you've had like a really long coaching career, so what would you say that are your biggest 3 coaching achievements?
That's a good question, because I always saw myself more in as a player developer. I get the most satisfaction of seeing the players that I've worked with move on to bigger and better things, and knowing that I had some little part in tweaking that or being part of that. I don't know. There's a lot of satisfaction in that. I always find there's selfish satisfaction in personal accolades when you know very well it's a team, But I mean, I've been lucky enough to actually be the head coach in 5 Gold Cups. Been to the semi-final in 1, and the quarterfinal in 3 others, with 2 different teams. Really, I think I would say also getting Trinidad and Tobago into the final 6, even though I wasn't allowed to finish the job. It had been a long run since they had last gotten in there, and getting them into the hex, which was actually getting them to a shot at the final 6 to get to the World Cup. I thought, considering all that we had been through, the lack of support from the association, and still the players managing to pull it off, it was I think an achievement that was special. Um, and then some of the individual games against US and Mexico um, in Gold Cup and World Cup qualifying were some special moments as well. I mean, it's not it's not easy to go into countries and get results. So if you go into Guatemala and you get a result, that's huge. You go to visiting countries in CONCACAF and you come away with results. It's it's major.
Do you feel like when you were coaching the national team, do you feel like a lot of that was because people recognized that you were good at developing players? Like was that time about trying to develop certain players?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. I mean, the national team job with Canada was. I mean, when you look at it now and you look at it in my time, I'm happy that finally the association recognizes that a lot of things are needed in order to get the players to perform in a certain way and give them every opportunity to get there. I mean, in my time, it was very difficult. We had one full-time staff beside myself. Everybody else was part-time staff on a volunteer basis, really, and we were only allowed to have 9, 10 staff at best, which included a doctor and 2 physiotherapists, and never allowed to have more than 18 players in camp.
Wow.
So it was a very different time, very, very different time. And so I'm sort of glad that that's come about. And then my time with Trinidad and Tobago, the first regime that I went in under, they were doing their best to do the right things and get the right games, and they kept out of my way. But that, and we were on the right track. Believe me, we were on the right track. And we started to get crowds back into the game, and the players started to believe in the national team again, and the fans began to believe in the national team again. We were getting 4,000 or 5,000 to a game when I came in, and then the games against Costa Rica, USA. So everybody that we played, the stadium was sold out. 25,000, 30,000 people.
Wow.
So we were on the right track, but again, a failure to recognize what goes on off the field severely impacts what goes on the field.
And so, do you think Canada's doing better now, like in terms of developing players from like a grassroots level?
I wouldn't say Canada is doing better. I think there's more opportunity for them to develop in better environments. They are coming. Before, you'd have to really beat the bushes all over the country to try and find young players for the youth teams. And some places you would go and see some talent, and the coaches wouldn't even let you go and talk to those players about coming to the Canada youth team. But now, with Toronto FC Academy and Vancouver and Montreal, and even the Sigma Academy and the programs in Quebec, and all these sort of things are adding up, and players are coming through, and now with the lax or the change in FIFA regulations as to who is eligible to play for a country, I think it's made things a lot better for the national team. And of course, we have players now that are more exposed. We always had players in Europe. I mean, Paul Stalteri won 2 Bundesliga titles. And Kevin McKenna was the captain of FC Cologne, and Atiba Hutchinson has been out there. And there've been a lot of players that have done very well. Thomas Rosiński was with Everton, but they never got the exposure. But of course, with Alphonso Davies and David and Davis and all these players getting all the exposure, it sort of lights a fire under the player development program.
Yeah, I bet that having those idols, and I know that I've watched a bunch of the Canada games, and like seeing so many great players on that Canadian national team, I really love watching them. And there's so many new players coming up too, like Theo Corbeanu from the Wolves Academy has been performing great for Canada. I think he was amazing. I think he was amazing when he played for Canada. And I wanted to ask you something about tactics and formation. So I love tactics, and I think that they're so interesting. I love to see how coaches use their tactics to beat other teams. So I wanted to ask you, what are your 3 favorite tactics and why?
Well, I wouldn't say I have 3 favorite tactics. I think I've understood that all things being equal, it comes down to some individual, right? Some individual sort of brilliance. And that's regardless of the level, right? So the main thing is to try to get the ball into those players that have that sort of impact, that can do the things that they, that change the game, whether it's creating, making the final pass, whether it's, being effective inside the box, or whatever it is. I think that's extremely important. The other thing that I think is important from a tactical standpoint is how well you play out of your position. So your positional awareness, the spacing of the lines, all of that I think is extremely important and from a tactical standpoint, because it's what allows you to recover the ball effectively. And if you can recover the ball in certain parts of the field, you can be more effective in terms of creating a chance than if you recover the ball in other parts of the field. So your positional spatial awareness is very, very important in recovering the ball. And at the same time, it's also important in creating overloads. So whether you have the overload centrally in the midfield, which is something I like to do, because I like a vertical game. I like the ball to be played forward very quickly and put the team under pressure, because it eliminates lines. And in order to do that, players have to have a certain skill set. They must have the vision and the ability to deliver that ball and support it. So I think those 3 things are the most important thing tactically.
You mentioned positional awareness. How do you coach that, and how would a young player develop that if they wanted to get better at that in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I've asked a similar question to a lot of young coaches. I see a young player at 13 or 14, and that player has certain qualities. And every time I talk to a coach, they say, well, he doesn't do this, that, and this. And you're not looking at the player for what he cannot do. You're looking at the player for what he can do, and how can you improve on that. So, for example, if the player is the type that likes to pick up the ball and is a good passer of the ball, can you help them with their body position and how they deliver the ball, vertically or switching the play or whatever, and just sort of help them spatially in what would be required from them in their position, right? So sometimes you might have a player, that has really good passing quality. I had Martin Nash, that was a phenomenal passer of the ball. And I asked him to play a holding midfielder for me. And the first thing he said was, I've never won a tackle in my life. But he saw the holding midfield role, even as a professional, because he was playing in the UK, I guess. He saw the holding midfielder's role as a destroyer. And what I wanted him to be for that team going into the Gold Cup was just to take away the channels and get on the ball and create from that deep position. So it depends on the player's qualities. He had the quality to deliver a pass anywhere. So if you could play him in the position of the most space, which is really the holding midfielder's role, that's where players usually have the most space, then you can use him effectively. You know what I mean? And if you have a good dribbler, for example, can you get them the ball as close as possible to the penalty box, and everybody else stay away from them and let them play one-on-one, because it's easier to play than 2-on-2 or 3-on-3. And everybody else position yourself in and around the box and look to feed off that final ball. So it's just a matter of helping them understand their qualities, helping the team to understand the players' qualities that they're playing with, and maximizing that. I had Jovain Jones with Trinidad and Tobago, who was a left back with every club he played. But for me, I moved him into midfield because he was an excellent dribbler.
Oh, really?
He was highly intelligent, and he could deliver a pass anywhere. So I pushed him higher up the field, and we just tried to get the ball into certain positions for him. And when you talk about tactics, Jack, we made sure that the midfielder on his side, the inside midfielder on his side, will stay behind the ball, because we know Jovain was not going to be, coming back and doing a lot of defending, because we wanted him to push forward so much, which is something we did with Dwayne De Rosario as well when I had Canada. So all those little things help the player understand their role better. But you have to convince them of it. Dwayne laughs at it now. But it took quite a bit to convince him to play wide left, because he always wanted to be the number 10.
Yeah. And you mentioned Dwayne De Rosario, and I think he's an amazing player, and he actually did some online training in COVID, so I trained with him a bit, and he's like a phenomenal player. So what was it like coaching him?
Dwayne was interesting, very talented. He had a very, very strong mental strength. Because Dwayne could miss 10 chances and he'll still try to take the 11th. He wouldn't dish the responsibility. But he was very good at dribbling, good dribbler, could shoot with either foot. I had no problems with him, none at all. But I was lucky with the Canada team. I had players with, good discipline, Ante Jazic, Paul Salteri, Atiba, Julia, and Patrice Bernier was a phenomenal player for me. So yeah, it was just a matter of convincing them that this is what I see them doing or being able to do, and then letting them do it.
So you kind of have a knack to see or to try new things that other people haven't tried.
Well, I try because I know. I don't know what the so-called great coaches do. What I do know is they buy the best players.
Right.
I do know that. But I try not to overcomplicate the football with the players. I try to show them, that this is what is possible. These are the options that are possible. There's certain things I want my team to do when we go out on the field, of course. But really and truly, it's you try to bring the players as close as possible to goal, and then they have to do the rest. But when you see certain statistics like most assists and all of that, assist is a difficult stat, because sometimes you deliver 2-3 brilliant passes into someone and they miss, and
right.
you get no credit for it. So I prefer passes creative.
Yeah, that's what Jack does. He's really good at passing it in. but sometimes the people just don't finish it.
Yeah,
So
you can't finish it
what
for
can you
them,
do?
Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah, though it's great when they do finish it.
Oh, of course. A good pass, a beautiful pass for a goal is very satisfying.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I play as a number 10 or on the left as an inverted winger. So I either try and go like 1v1 or like and try and get that pass through.
Good. Keep it
And
up.
yeah, thanks. And I do have a question for you about the number 10. So, I watched a video that said like the death of the pure number 10, and I've noticed that like a lot of pure number 10s have come back into more of like a number 8. So why do you think that is, and what do you think about the reinvention of the number 10 when they started a little more out wide?
Yeah, I think the pure number 10 in the Platinis, Maradonas, sort of role disappeared with team defending. In their time, a lot of it was individual defending, was man for man. People would follow you around the pitch, and you could make your own space. But now with the compactness of teams, especially in the central area, where the number 10 used to play is now the point of the least space in football. So you saw the number 10 starting to move into different positions, and Zidane and Riquelme were good examples of that, where they would drift out to the left side of the park, and even Henry, they would drift out to the left side of the park and find a bit of space, and they started to say, well, the new number 10s are in the wide position, but they're not really in the wide position. They're drifting into those positions, which in the 4-3-3, the 8 sort of occupies along with what would have been the 10. So yeah, it's a little bit of finding the space somewhere different, and with so many teams so compact in that central, what they call zone 14 area now, you have to move out of that to find your space and be creative. And if you notice, with Manchester City, Kevin De Bruyne drifts out either wide left or wide right to find the space to use his creativity, his final passing. So it's just a tweak on the position, really.
Yeah, Kevin De Bruyne is great at that, and his passing is phenomenal. That's something that I love about him. Like he's like such a great passer.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, those are some incredible insights that you've given us.
Yeah, like I love hearing you talk about tactics because you know so much about tactics. I love hearing like all of your I love hearing all of your ideas, and I love like kind of like hearing your thought process about all of these tactics.
Yeah, well, I mean, like everybody else, I'm just kind of copying from what somebody else does and tweaking on it, but at the end of the day, you always have to remember that you need the players. The game belongs to the players. I firmly believe that. I always said that. And it's all well and good for you to say, well, I'm going to play with, my fullbacks tucking in and doing this and doing that. And it's very difficult. When you have a Philippe Lam, it's easy, But if it was that easy, a lot of teams would be doing it. But also, if it was that easy, they wouldn't be paying 80,000, pound, 80 million pound for a right fullback. So, they make it sound very, very easy.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about the concept of Grinta, because we saw that you had written that on a whiteboard in the Island game. So what is Grinta?
I worked with a coach named Otmani Bir, brilliant coach. He was Algerian, French trained, and he used that concept with the players. And Grinta is an Italian word for fight, desire, you know, understanding that you're going to have to concentrate, to fight, to be in the moment all the time for the 90 minutes. If you don't have that, if you don't have that in your makeup, it's very, very difficult to play games. And I think three times in the island games we were down and came back. And for me, that is Grinta. Never ever saying I'm dead. And it's one thing I admired about Alec Ferguson teams. I was never a big Manchester United fan except when Dwight York played there. But his teams had that. They could be 2-0 down with 2 minutes left, and they would fight for that one goal. They would always try to get something out of the game, and I think that's a very special quality. Very special quality.
I agree. And also, I think you guys also must have done like a lot of grinta in that game where York York United now, where you guys were down one man with a red card. But at the end of the game, you just got that free kick and you just always kept pushing. And even though you were a man down, you looked like the better team in that game against York.
Yeah, the players certainly played that game right down to the final whistle, and I think the joy you saw from the goal being scored was more out of that than actually, we scored the goal that tied the game. I think it was about just showing that never say die attitude.
Yeah, the resiliency.
That's correct. You're better with words than I am.
Well, we're certainly looking forward to seeing the Wanderers this year. I can't wait for that to start. Looks like you've got a really interesting squad. We're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
So when is it starting?
I don't do well when there's no football. I don't do that.
Yeah,
I drive everybody in the house here crazy.
And I do have a question about the new squad, though. So you have been back in training. Unfortunately, the training has stopped due to COVID. Hopefully, that will start soon. That will start up again soon. But what would you say is the biggest strength of the new squad?
Well, it's hard to say without seeing them because it's a completely new season, and if you look at Liverpool, you can see how things could not go the right way, just as an example. The thing is we have a bit more depth at the back than we had before. We have a different look in midfield, which gives us a little bit of a tweak in terms of we can push high up the pitch or we can play more defensively if necessary. So we have those tweaks there, and we've got a little bit of surprise up front to complement what we had, and hopefully we will have a healthier Corey Bent and Alex Marshall, because I think they're two players that we saw a glimpse of their qualities,
right?
But they were not 100%. So hopefully this year they can be on top of their game.
Mm-hmm. And Alessandro Righi, I'm also excited to see like his 100% too, because I think he was also recovering from a big injury.
Yeah, and he is one of those players that you actually have to turn back his training a bit, because he would run all day if you ask him to. Whatever you ask, he does. He's one of those. And I have to be careful of him and Rampersad, because sometimes they don't recognize the importance of rest.
Right. Good. Well, thank you so much, Stephen Hart, for taking the time with us.
Anytime.
Yeah, we really, I mean, some just say absolutely incredible insights. We're going to be listening to this one back and taking some more notes. Thanks for sharing all your wisdom with us.
No, thanks for having me, guys. I
Yeah.
I know how much you support the team, and I always look forward to our discussions, post game. It's always interesting.
Yeah, I really like those too. They're my favorites.
Take it easy on us, Jack.
Okay, but I just want to say thank you again so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it, and I love all of your coaching insight.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.